Okay, I'll now call to order this regular board meeting of the North Lamar ISD Board of Trustees. It's Monday, November 8th. Time is 6 o'clock. And we will start with our invocation, which is led by Henry Blackman, the pastor of East Post Oak Missionary Baptist Church.
Father, which art in heaven, we thank you for this day that you have blessed us with. We thank you for the many students that this district is being committed to his trust. We thank you for this school board who sees to the advancement of this school district. We pray that your blessings be upon this meeting. May they seek your wisdom, and may your Spirit guide them, dear Lord, as they make decisions for the betterment of this district and for the education of the children in this community. We ask you, and we know that you will bless and strengthen. In the precious name of Jesus we pray.
Amen. We'll now have our Pledge of Allegiance led by Stone Middle School.
I have Stone's star students for the month of October leading us. I have Carter Wiley, Ryan Trenchard, Nolan Spencer, James Fugit, and Maddie Wolf.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, public testimony. No one has signed up for public testimony, so we'll move on to item 4, public forum. And we have one person signed up for public forum. So the next, oh, I'm sorry, 2 people. I'm sorry. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. All right. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. This is the time for citizens, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. Comments from the audience will not be permitted during other portions of the meeting. Please note that unless an individual's comments relate to an item on the agenda, the board is not allowed to respond other than to provide factual information or recite existing policy. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and the subject matter of your comments must be written on the sign-in sheet prior to the start of the meeting. The sign-in sheet is located in the front of the meeting room. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes unless the presiding officer determines it is necessary to make adjustments to the board's procedures for effective meeting management or to accommodate large numbers of persons wishing to address the board. However, an individual who wants to speak on an item on the agenda will not be given less than 1 minute to speak. If a group of people want to be heard on the same topic, the board asks that they designate a spokesperson to avoid needless repetition. The board shall allot no more than 30 minutes for the public comment portion of the meeting. The presiding officer shall determine whether an individual addressing the board has attempted to solve a matter administratively through resolution channels established by policy. If not, the individual shall be referred to the appropriate policy to seek resolution, DGBA, FNG, or GF. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. If, after at least 1 warning from the presiding officer, any individual continues to disrupt the meeting by his or her words or actions, the presiding officer may request assistance from law enforcement officials to have the individual removed from the meeting. As the presiding officer, I will strictly enforce these procedures. With those cautions in mind, we'll now please to hear public comments. And Mr. Wright, you were first. And you will have 5 minutes, and I'll start as soon as you start.
Public information request was submitted to North Lamar in September for all reading material titles, including the authors that are available to North Lamar students in the current school year. In October, a response to the PIR was received from Powell Law Group. The response was incomplete, but it did include a list of approximately 34,755 book titles. The American Library Association and other resources have been used to identify book titles that may be inappropriate for schools due to critical race theory, gender identity, and privileged content. And then a partial review of the 34,755 North Lamar books was begun. purpose of my testimony is to provide the board with a summary of the findings of this very brief review, which you have in front of you. The list of 10 books that are highlighted green indicate that those books were not found on the North Lamar reading lists. However, the next list of 28 books that are highlighted yellow for concerning content and red for inappropriate content were found on the North Lamar reading list. And I'd like to share some of the content that's in just one of these books, The Bluest Eye. I found this book at the Paris Public Library in a 7-hour CD collection, which I have listened to in its entirety. This book contains race hatred from start to finish. Inappropriate language, the F word and the N word are used many times each. It's sexually explicit. It contains a detailed and lengthy description of a father who hates and violently rapes his 11-year-old daughter. There is parental violence, ridicule, and abandonment of their own children. There's a scene with sexual arousal with a cat. There's a newborn black baby that is literally thrown out with the trash. And then at the end, there's a lengthy, disrespectful letter written to God by a pedophile who blames God for his many sins. Some of the other titles that are highlighted red in your attachment contain additional inappropriate content, including anti-police narratives, bias against males, drug use, gang murder and revenge murder, teen sex with an adult, anal sex, incest, mass shooting, and narratives that the USA is systemically racist. The review that's been completed thus far is brief but concerning. So therefore, I suggest that the board assign resources to begin a more thorough review of the school system's reading materials using the list that you've just been provided with as a starting point. Please remove any books you find that contain race hatred, gender identity, and privileged teachings. Please establish an ongoing specific board meeting agenda item for the purpose of providing the public with monthly updates on your progress. If you do not currently have a policy in place to review and approve reading materials for appropriateness before those materials are made available to students, then please develop one. If you do have a policy, it appears that it may not be working. Please also use the monthly updates to provide more transparency regarding who is serving on committees for reading materials and curriculum approval. Additionally, more transparency is needed regarding UIL state and regional extemporaneous speech and debate topics that are potentially divisive and currently include the following topics. 1. What is the controversy surrounding the passage of Texas House Bill 3979 with regard to critical race theory? 2, should critical race theory be incorporated into Texas public school curriculum? 3, how are U.S. public schools incorporating critical race theory into current curriculum? And 4, why are Texas Republican lawmakers opposed to critical race theory instruction in public schools? I support free speech and I oppose book banning. However, the North Lamar materials that I'm referencing appear to be misleading and ill-guided for young minds that are trying to determine right from wrong, and these materials may not be appropriate for our schools. I'm available and willing to help you in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. And our second one is Teresa Bissell. Oh, sorry. Our second one is Teresa Bissell.
Do you provide, I guess you don't provide a comment to that one before I say.
Right, we cannot speak to that.
Hello, my name is Dr. Teresa Bissell. I actually was waiting to see if you had a response because I have watched a few of the meetings where you indicate you are compliant after hearing a testimony, and so I was waiting on that. Really, I'm just going to make my what I was going to say more brief. One of the things that I would recommend in response to addressing Mr. Wright's comment is perhaps making a publicly accessible link where you can access the reading materials, including when you address reading materials, that means anything that's accessible to students, what's being taught in the classroom, how it's being taught, for instance. But the titles and the authors, there were a lot of authors missing, and that can create a misconception in which book is being provided for the reading material. But that's what I'm going to say tonight. I have a lot more to say, but I think if you would consider providing a publicly accessible link, it is public information because the community is curious. They want to know what's going on in the schools. Taxpayers want to know where their money is being spent, and parents want to know what's going on in the classrooms and in the teaching environment, which is in the entire district. Okay, so anyway, that's really all that I was going to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to consent agenda. Ms. Darrow?
Yep, does anybody have any questions with the investment reports? Are you doing that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Okay, motion made by Red. Seconded by Sheila. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. We move on to item 6, action discussion items. Item A, discussion only, attendance and enrollment. Mr. Watson.
In your board, you should have a copy of the enrollment for November the 3rd. If you look at Higgins, they were up by 7 students at 343. Everett was at 272. Hartford 236. Bay at 287. Stone at 540. And the high school at 706. Overall, we had 2 students decline last month or this month. Our ADA enrollment at Higgins is 306.5, Everett 272, Parker at 211.5, Bay 287, Stone at 540, and the high school at 706. The refined ADA, which is our student number that we use to find for our budgeting, as of November the 3rd, was at 2157, which was at 93.92% attendance. And I don't know if you remember, in September, our attendance was like at 92 point something. So in a couple of months, we've improved our attendance by 1 percentage point, which is great, because that basically adds about 24 more students to our ADA. With that number, 2157, that is 50 students more than what we budgeted. And as you've heard me say before, as long as we have more students than we budget, it's going to be good to keep within our budget. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you. Item B, discussion only. City of Paris Master Thoroughfare Plan, Andrew Mag, Director of Planning and Community Development, and Chris Donnan, Hayter Engineering, Contracted Interim City Engineer.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the school board. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to Superintendent Stewart for the invitation to the city to come and visit with you all this evening about your future development plans for your elementary school on the site that you are discussing and you have a bond approval for. My name is Andrew Mack, and I am your Director of Planning and Community Development here in the city of Paris, Texas. I'm also joined by Chris Donnan, our interim city engineer with Hayter Engineering. Both of us are here to share just a little bit of information with you this evening about the city's master thoroughfare plan and our subdivision ordinance requirements, which is a requirement for the future development and permitting of the school. Normally, our process is that we work with all developers and folks that are looking to build and develop in our community. We've set out a process for doing just exactly that. That process was in place before I started. I've been here with the city now just about 7 months. And one of the things that we do is when we schedule these, we invite the various agencies and players to the table have a stake in permitting or agency authority or responsibility. In this particular case, we were contacted by your development team representative, Hector, who is here this evening as well, and we are more than happy to schedule a pre-development meeting. Normally what we do is we address the physical aspects of development and various permit requirements, zoning, platting, and so forth. So that's basically the process that we undertook just about a month ago or less, and during that process we typically address all of those considerations that I mentioned. So as a part of the plat review process, which is a requirement for development of the site for elementary school, we identified, as you see on the screen here, a future proposed collector street. And that is shown right here in yellow, which runs right through the center of the site that is shown here, outlined in blue, that's owned by the district. So as you can see, this line that is shown it's an approximate line of where the city anticipates the collector street to run, stretching all the way from Main Street North to 71 Trunk Highway, all the way back down to the south, where it crosses over Stillhouse Road and runs further down toward the loop and the Trunk 185, just west of there. And so what our subdivision ordinance talks about in terms of the line that's shown here is that at such time when land is prepared to develop, number one, we want to work with the entity to identify the fact that the line is there and that there's a proposed thoroughfare plan that's part of that. And in fact, this thoroughfare plan dates back in the city's thoroughfare planning documents back in 2001. The most recent update to that was in 2018. That line didn't change. It's been there since 2001, so several decades at this point in time. Beyond that, my message here to the board this evening is the fact that the city is here to work and cooperate with the school board in a very important development for a new elementary school within our community. The city and school board, it is our intent to provide whatever effort and cooperation that we can to collaborate and work with the board for the successful development of this site and project for the future of our community and our students that will be attending this, and to do so in a safe and efficient manner as identified as part of the city's long-range comprehensive plan, of which the Master Thoroughfare Plan is a part. So I think with that, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to our city engineer, knowing that we've identified this as a discussion point. There has been some give and take along the way with both your superintendent as well as with your development team, and we would like to talk a little bit further about some opportunities for the ways for the city to work and collaborate with the district on how that future street improvement will be both made in terms of construction as well as the dedication of that future alignment. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having us here tonight. I'll be brief, get a little more detail about the thoroughfare plan. The orange and yellow line that you saw on the screen, that is a collector street. And what a collector street is, it requires a 60-foot right-of-way dedication as well as a 39-foot wide road back to curb. And that's just per the city's subdivision ordinance. Park Hill has been nice enough to work with us on several different layouts and options, trying to accommodate the city's need to have this collector street for future development, as well as to make sure we have something that works for North Lamar Independent School District. And so what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Hector, and he's going to walk y'all through some of the alternatives that have been looked at and discussed.
No, actually Hector's going to present at the end of the meeting.
Well,
I just really wanted to open it up at this point, Chris, to let any of the board members ask either you or Andrew any
Sure.
questions that they might have regarding the plan.
Excellent. And, well, what you can see up there right now is one of the more recent layouts that Parkville has put together. And you see the thoroughfare on the north side of campus that then cuts down to the stoplight. That's the most logical place to connect to 271 as a signal intersection. And be more than happy to answer any questions between Andrew and I, you guys have.
I got a couple. So you want us to tell the taxpayers, you want us to finance some of this road? Are y'all going to maintain it? And are y'all going to give us the water, the sewer, and electric? Are y'all going to install that?
So it'll be
So you said it was that ordinance. You said it's part of the subdivision. So are y'all going to put in the water and sewer since y'all are the contractors?
the development always drives the infrastructure improvements of water and sewer.
So y'all not going to put any water and sewer on? Or electrical?
No.
So you want us to tell our taxpayers to put money in on this road, but then we're going to have to put the water and sewer ourselves. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. What benefit is it to North Lamar? That's what I want to know.
I'd like to comment. What the city is prepared to do is to provide the availability of those services. Normally, whenever property develops on any side of town, the landowner that is proposing the improvements and development is responsible for those improvements.
So, and you also said you're going to maintain it. Are y'all going to maintain it like you do Stone Avenue and Steelhouse Road? Because go out there and look at them roads, and you tell me you want us to take y'all's word. You're all going to maintain it like them two roads.
Now, in fact, with regard to the collector street that's being discussed and as is shown in the option here, once that road is constructed, of which the city is prepared to have some dialogue in terms of how that potential cost of that will be paid based upon what you need to improve to your site. But the city will, in fact, once it's completed, take it over and maintain it.
So y'all have money, so you're telling me y'all have no clue that you'll ever even build this road? That's what I mean, right?
Well, what we're saying is that based upon this plan and the plat that you all will be required to have approved in order to get a building permit to build the school, that the district is responsible for constructing the street.
So we've been doing this for a year now, planning, been in the paper, all over the radio, the news, and not one person from the city come down here and tell us about it until we go up there and start getting permits. Now, explain that.
That's exactly the point in time the process kicks in.
So y'all even think about that when we're doing our permits? I mean, the planning, you know, $23 million school, and now you're telling us we're going to move everything because y'all can put a road there that you might not never put, except for what we put in there. So you're telling me the road's going to go all the way back. Whenever we start our road, where we finish, y'all going to start right after it.
At some point in the future,
Well, what's the future? Give us
when
an idea.
development does occur, that would be extended.
So it may be 30 years from now before y'all even do it.
Or it could be sooner. There is a high desirability to locate new homes in residential subdivisions close to where an elementary school is. That's a very normal thing throughout the entire country. So in terms of when we start the process when we are contacted regarding the requirements for development. Now, in my case, had I been here more than 7 months, back whenever we all started this, my practice in the past has been to work with the school district. We're updating our plan. That would have been my process. I would have reached out to your superintendent 3 or 4 years ago and said, you know, listen, we're looking at updating this, and we typically like involvement from the school. I like involvement from the school district. I can't speak for the way that the city handled it before I arrived as your planning director, but in the past that's been my approach. And so I apologize if the city didn't reach out to y'all to discuss this sooner. That would have been the right thing to do. Apparently that's not the way it worked this time in the process.
But what's the benefit for North Lamar? For us to tell that they have to put money in on this road. I mean,
the benefit is you need to build roads to get into your site.
Right, and we were going to do that. But now we got to make it bigger. It's got to be bigger.
And the city is saying it will take over the maintenance of that road once it's constructed, and that we are open to dialogue and participating in upsizing costs potentially of that road width itself.
So, in other words, if you guys are planning on putting in a 24-foot wide road to 271, and the city requires a 39-foot collector street, then the cost to go from 24 to 39, the city would partner with the district on that to get it to that.
So if we don't put a road, you'll have to pay for the whole thing.
If you don't put a road?
Yeah.
Well, if you put anything in the, whatever right-of-way is going to be dedicated, then it's got to be 39 feet wide.
I mean, if we don't even put a road where y'all saying that, y'all have to come in and build a road, right?
No, the thoroughfare plan that the city has goes through this site. It will connect to the stoplight. So at some point, there's going to be
A road there.
Going to be a road.
But nobody knows when.
Development will drive that. Yeah.
Okay.
So Chris,
Yes, sir.
where the road was gonna be, in that drawing, it doesn't show to be going through the middle of the elementary like I had heard. Y'all had proposed for a street to go right through the middle of that new school.
That's right. So when the thoroughfare plan is put together, it does not lock in the exact location of where that road needs to go. So when this site or any other site comes to the city and somebody says we want to develop it, we try to incorporate that thoroughfare into their development. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense to run it straight through the middle of campus. And so there is that leeway to try to get it to incorporate into campus while still getting a thoroughfare without making this property.
So your team is willing to work with our team to make it go north of the building that we proposed?
Absolutely, and we've already worked with Park Hill, and from the city standpoint, what was on the screen there is going to meet the city's needs if it meets the school.
I got to know, has anybody done any kind of safety about running this road by our school like that? With 18-wheelers rolling by, that's an elementary. So is anybody in kind of a safety?
You shouldn't have too many 18-wheelers going down the collector street, especially if it's a dead end.
So there won't be no big trucks and nothing coming down through there. I mean,
Unless they get
has
lost.
anybody did a safety?
There certainly will be for deliveries to the school.
Right, and so y'all haven't done that yet, even though it's safe enough to put a road right
Well,
beside the elementary.
I will say a 39-foot wide road with a large 18-wheeler would be safer than a 24-foot wide road with a large 18-wheeler.
Well, we wouldn't let them come through our campus.
Well, once the road is fully established, and like you said, it might not be anytime soon, but once the road is connected from 271 all the way down to the feeder road, then 18-wheelers could take the road to bypass the light at the loop. If you're familiar with the light at the loop, at any time during the day, if you're coming from 271 headed south, it's a very long wait to get on the loop. And my concern is that once the road is fully developed, that we are going to have larger trucks taking that route to try to bypass that loop, trying to get onto the loop. And I do very much have a concern about the safety of our students, and that being up against an elementary school. And I know that Hector's going to talk about it here in a minute with all the different options that we looked at, so I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves, because really, at this point in the meeting, it's just to talk about the thoroughfare plan. I would like to ask this, and I realize that both of you are new at this, and so you may or may not be able to answer this, but I have talked to the former administration. North Lamar ISD purchased this property in 2016. I was not the superintendent at the time, but I have spoken to former administration. Is it common for the city to send a letter to the landowners? Because I've spoken to several landowners that this is affecting, and they have absolutely no idea that this plan even exists. I did do a little research with the Paris News to see that there was a small classified ad placed in the newspaper about a public hearing about the thoroughfare plan. But the map that we were presented by the city, and I think you showed this earlier, except ours is a little bit more colorful. Why was that not put in the Paris News for the landowners to see, so that they would know that this thoroughfare plan was going to affect the property?
I think Andrew said earlier, when the 2018 thoroughfare plan was adopted, this was not a new addition. So nothing had changed from 2001, and I do not know the process they went through in 2001 to notify property owners of the new addition.
Thank you.
And that was one of my questions, Chris. This thing developed in 2001, is that what you said, Mr. Mack? And then nothing transpired with it until 2018. And we've been trying for the last 4 years to pass a bond, and we have looked at other locations and decided to purchase this land over here, and nobody, I mean, I know you've lived here a long time, but you wasn't working for the city at that time, and I know you just moved in. You can't say what the other folks before you have done, but it looks like somebody would have reached out to landowners, and I appreciate you, Superintendent, searching with Paris News about that article, but I know all kind of landowners out there. I've reached out to them. They was not notified of this. But once again, hats off, appreciate y'all working with our folks to get this thing settled. But still, when it first came, it said, that's designed to run a road right through the elementary school. And I know you're smarter than that, you know. But I think we're going to hear some more possible solutions to correcting this. But with both, once again, on the water, sewer, and all that, that is one of the main things that I think that's what's holding back 271 North from building. But there is some building going on down through there. How are they getting, other than county water, how are they getting water, sewer, all utilities? My question is, if you go on down there north of the church, there's a concrete driveway approach that some group had one thing, going to put some doctor's office, maybe a possible hospital, I don't remember all the facts. And then to the north of that, there's the pizza place, they're putting, I think, a trailer place in. If you look way back off out there, there's a fire hydrant out there. Now, I know that fire hydrant can't operate without water.
Right.
Whose water line does that belong to?
That's the city of Parish water line, and when that, as it's been relayed to me in the early to mid-90s, when the possibility for that medical center or hospital was in place, the development group paid to have that water line installed, as well as that kind of that double, large
What size
driveway.
of water line, and where does that come from? Does that come across our school property or the cities? Or?
The Public Works Department right now is actually working to figure out where that water line goes. It's
It's 6 inch, right?
It's a 6 or an 8 inch potentially. It's got to at least be a 6 inch. That's right. Potentially an 8 inch, and so there is stories told that it may extend quite far out into that field, and it varies on how far, and also possibility that it curved down and headed south some bit. And so Public Works is trying to figure out exactly where that water line ends. If in fact it's there, then that's good news for me.
So they got a water hydrant.
That is the good news. That is the good news. We do have water service available to the site.
Well, it's just a dead end line with stagnant water potentially, unless they close the valve on it or something.
Chris, I had a question. On the, I guess the alternate proposal, it looked like where the school site was set at an angle there. Is that road, is that still the collector road being shown that it's joining, or is that in the original map that was given to us, there's an arterial road that's further north? That's not that arterial road that it's going up to, is it?
No, not all. That arterial road is part of the thoroughfare plan, and it's a larger loop, and it actually, I believe it connects to, I call it Lake Crook Road, which is several thousand feet.
So the whole purpose of it's just that red light. That's the whole purpose of that road, is for the red light, right?
Yes, that
You
red
could
line.
move that red light just down there by Lake Crook Road. I mean, they're going to put a red light there too, aren't they?
That's a different street classification. This is be a larger, wider, probably a 4-lane divided. A collector street is just 39 feet curb to curb, center line stripe, typically 2-lane traffic, maybe with a shoulder.
Well, I guess my question ultimately is getting to one that maybe you could answer as a developer. Does development in the city typically follow collector streets first and then out to arterials, or do you typically develop the arterial areas first and then the collector streets follow that? Or does that matter?
Right, so a lot of times you'll see I'll do it in terms of a residential subdivision, you'll see your local streets or your residential streets. Those will develop first, then you'll get collectors, then arterials, and then we get you your highways. But developers do look at collector streets as a positive thing. So knowing that there's one there, there's right of way there for one, it helps drive development.
Thank you.
So the whole reason to put this road in is for potential residential development? Is that the whole kind of reason behind it?
Well, we can't necessarily control all the development, but it would typically follow that residential development would lead to a collector street, on a collector street. So Pine Mill is a pretty good example of a collector street in Paris. You have a lot of residential neighborhoods that tie into Pine Mill, south of the Loop. You've got a few offices, surgery centers, and kind of commercial businesses like that also set up there.
Another tool that we use since we're talking about the city's comprehensive plan and how it relates to your property, this is actually the city's approved plan for guiding how future land is expected to develop over time. So you'll see that the red here represents commercial future use, basically a pretty standard, strip commercial along your major arterial road, which would be 271, and then back further from there we show low density residential as what's guided or as expected. From there we take the future guided land use and then we put a zoning map together. So as of today, I'll show you that map. It looks like we would control the actual use and development of land based upon the current zoning. So as you'll see, the site is actually zoned for commercial development, and it just so happens that an elementary school is a permitted use within that commercial zoning district. So there isn't per se a change that's need to be made, but oftentimes, educational and institutional buildings are allowed in multiple zoning districts. And that's the case here. Now, if that were to be residentially developed, say, for example, in the back portion, let's say that the district acquired what it needed to acquire based on the land that was available for sale. Now, if some of that were to become access land back to the east, which isn't needed for the elementary school, the district would potentially, through its subdivision process or platting opportunity, have the right to allow that collector street to be extended by a residential subdivider that the district may consider selling off excess property to help to go back to recoup some costs of your site improvements over time. Even incorporating your future expansion, which we'll talk about later in the plan that was laid out to us.
So is it fair to assume then that, if this has been a plan since 2001, that the development of the school just happens to be a significant enough development to spark the discussion about where this collector road would go and actually put it into play?
It would be any development that would go in on the site. If it was a business and they're coming in to get a building permit for a new commercial building, if that was to have gone in there, we would require that they plat and then build a road in off of 271 and access their site off that new street improvement. That would be the same requirement no matter what goes in that place. And again, that's guided through this plan and at the point in time when somebody's got to come through the city to get a plat approved for a building permit of any sort.
Thank you.
Mr. Mack, on that collector road, it comes off North Highway, across the Steel House. Is that down there on Spur 139 proposed to come out of?
That's correct.
Is it in y'all's plan? I know you can't predict it, but to help diverse some of the loop traffic on that collector road instead of all of it up on Northeast Loop? It gets crazy.
Typically, the collector streets are not intended to provide a shortcut or a different route to circumvent your major arterials. What the collector street is intended to do, its purpose, is to provide access to a series of internal local streets that would then be collected to get back to your major transportation arterials, like 271, like the Loop, like Main Avenue, like our other, typical trunk highway systems, Lamar, Clarksville, Bonham, these types of streets.
So right now, what y'all proposing for us to help bring that down to the school, but it won't be all the way through the Steel House or Spur 139 when y'all start building it. Right now, you just bring it.
No, it would just be as the development dictates, as the development occurs. And sometimes when we have, let's say, a separated parcel, like we would have in this case, and the road's only built up to the point where it's needed for the school, then it becomes a challenge to figure out how to extend it further beyond that. So that would be a future challenge that the school board may be involved with at some point if there's interest in cooperating with a future developer adjacent to, or perhaps even as part of your easterly site. And the city would of course work with that and assist in whatever way we would potentially assist.
And I know we have city ordinances, no trucks in certain parts of town unless they're making a delivery, but someone said earlier about big trucks getting lost and going down there. I know all they're going to do is tear up our parking lots and our drives going into the school if they get down in there and try to turn around. I know the 39-foot width is great for them, but the safety of the kids, once kids are concerned, maybe Hartsville will have something to tell us about that later.
Well, where we would have a dead-end street, there would be some form of turnaround at the end if it's only partially constructed. And we would typically work on that through the planning process. One other thing I did want to mention also about safety is there are a number of traffic safety measures, signage with lights, so forth, that would provide for increased safety, and not just with regard to 18-wheeler traffic, with regard to anybody who's driving on a public city street through a school zone. There are safety measures that can and should be employed. We want to make sure that students are safe to walk on a sidewalk along a city street that's adjacent to a school area, to make sure that we have good walkability. There's a lot of effort throughout the country right now to provide safe routes to school. In fact, the city's embarking on a process right now to update our comprehensive plan to make sure that we have an interconnected system of sidewalks and trails, and we want to be able to correctly link those sidewalks and trail systems to the points where people are connected to places, and that elementary school is absolutely one of those. So that's certainly an important part of how we would address the street construction as well.
I just like to make a comment. I feel this land was bought for the expansion and the future of the Baltimore School District. And now that we have a plan and an expansion, and we were looking so forward to doing this, is it absolutely necessary that we have a street run right down the middle of what we've been working on for years and years to do?
Doesn't have to run down the middle, but to stay.
So this could be adjusted and changed so it would not affect our campus the way it apparently appears to be doing. I mean, and like Bo has said, we really don't know what the plan is for the future, but right now, Northmore ISC, we know what our plan is for our future. We'd like to go ahead with this project, And if we have to deal with safety and highway construction going down the middle of what we plan our future to be, then, I'm not quite understanding why this has all come up now. And I mean, I've been in this bond issue for what? We've been 9, 10 years working on this, hoping that we would get this passed. And our community is looking forward to this happening. And now we're being told that the city of Paris is going to build a road through what our future is.
So that road that the district would be building, not the city, we would be cooperating with you.
But is this a road that we want?
Well, so the point is that the city's plans call for this as a part of the future of the city, of which the school district is a part. To answer your question more directly is, does a street have to be built here where it's planned? And according to our plan, the answer is yes, but there is an option within the plan and the ordinance that allows the district as the subdivider to approach the planning commission and the city council through a public hearing process if the district wishes to amend that plan. And that's a decision that's not made at the front stage of a development project. It's a decision that's made by the planning commission and the city council before the subdivision planning process is undertaken. So that option does exist. It's one of 3 options that has been looked at for the improvement to access to this site from the trunk highway. And we've provided your development team with, and your superintendent, I believe, with that application form. If you wish to pursue that, that's certainly in the district's prerogative. And we'll be happy to entertain however you'd like to proceed with this. But that is an option in direct response to your question.
Thank you.
So just a blunt question. So it doesn't really matter if the school wants it or not. It's going to happen. It just depends on where it's going to happen. Is that basically it?
Generally, yes. It's part of the thoroughfare plan. So per the ordinance, the right-of-way needs to be dedicated. The other option is to amend the thoroughfare plan, which is a separate process that you have to go through to get the thoroughfare plan changed to where that road does not go through this piece of property.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have one question. So when the land is purchased in 2016, is that correct? So we do a title search, we do a deed search, we do everything. There's no easements, there's no nothing. Nothing comes up about this whatsoever. The church that owned it before us, nothing comes up. So you're telling me that just because you passed this back in 2001, it's not known who you... So we buy the land with no knowledge, no prior knowledge of this being there. So I don't understand, because when you buy land, you do all your searches and everything, your title searches, deed searches. I don't see how this slips through the cracks.
So this is a plan. It's a planning document. So when you do your title search and your deed search, it's not going to come up and show that an easement exists. What's going to happen with this plan is that an easement will be dedicated by the district for this road, and then from that point forward.
So everybody else that owns land on that yellow line, you're going to take part of their land without their knowledge, without ever having information to them about this happening. Because if you look at the article that was put in the paper, it says no location where this is happening or what's happening. So, I mean, I know you weren't here at that time, but, I mean, I just don't understand how this can pass when the landowners and the property owners did not know that they needed to come and speak to the city council or the city, whoever it is.
So those conversations could be had if the landowner approached us and wanted to develop that property. Development would drive that. So, and the other thing, not to be rude or anything like that, but the plan's available on the city's website. The ordinance is available on the city's website. So there is the opportunity to find it. And when you do reach out to the city, they'll work with you on how to move forward and get the property developed.
I just But they don't know that their land is in this. I mean, Northmore didn't know their land had this going through it, so, I mean, if they sell their land and somebody else buys it to develop it, they are stuck just like we are, having to deal with this with no prior knowledge.
It's true that a planning process can be very difficult to garner public input and involvement. I'm sure that on a lot of issues that come before the school board, folks may come back and tell you, well, I never knew about this. Well, we invited you to show up, and you know how difficult it can be to get folks to volunteer or want to get involved or engaged in what's going on beyond their walls of their confines of where they live sometimes, or where they recreate, or where they attend church. So again, in my estimation, had I been here, had we updated the plan, it would have been much more public involvement driven than what the previous person that was on staff that drafted this plan. The second point I want to make, you talked about the line and the potential that somebody's land is taken. This line does not represent any attempt of the city to take land. That's not what this is. This strictly, as Chris said, a planning document. This is not anything that is involving the acquisition of property or improvements. There's a separate and different process for that. If the city were to undertake such an effort, that's a different process. As Chris mentioned, and I've mentioned at least once tonight, this is a guiding document that talks about how we will provide for the efficient and safe movement of traffic throughout our community. And this is strictly driven by land development. It's the land development itself that triggers the need to make these road improvements. And again, my offer to the board tonight is to continue to work with you, with your development team, in whatever way we can to make this the most safe and efficient layout, and in addition to whatever cost participation that the city may be able to offer in whatever respect to upsize what it was that the district was intending to construct as a part of its private drives into the site.
Mr. Mayor, so where we have proposed to put a drive in from the intersection at the red light out here, up to our parking lots and everything around this new elementary school, you're saying that instead of making it a driveway
24 or 30 feet wide, whatever your designers. Minimum is 24 for a fire lane. That's the bare minimum.
Now
You should be involved. No parking along your drives. It would be a 24-foot wide minimum striped fire lane.
Right. But now what y'all are proposing for us to have to go in there and make a 39-foot drive with specs that'll hold up 18-wheelers and make it a road instead of a driveway now, correct?
Correct. And I'm assuming that the district would build a drive that would hold up over time. You wouldn't want to build it, have it fall apart in a year or two. It would need to be built to a spec that would withhold semi-traffic, because you will be having semis delivered to and from your site, plus while you're constructing.
But if we can meet with our architects and they can say, okay, Mr. Holmes, board, this is where we can put the road, street, or drive, whatever you want to, but we putting it on our land, and we meet y'all's specs so we can get this permit and move on for the good of these children, then y'all, I mean, we can say what's going to go down that road or our driveway, and y'all have no say so, correct?
That's not entirely correct.
Well, that's what I think, correct or not correct?
Now, the city has the authority through the subdivision planning process to tell you where that collector street is going to go. And we've looked at it close enough to say that the conceptual line that came through wasn't properly lined up with the intersection at the signal where it would belong. So that is the appropriate location.
How many times?
So whose fault is that? Not the school district, surely. State of Texas is a whole lot smarter to put that intersection there than we are.
That's going to provide for the safe
They did
movement
studies out
of
here.
the school traffic out of its site.
cross onto 271, cross over or turn onto, or turn off of.
It's like a pretty center with that crossover to me.
That plan is,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so I'm being dense right now, I'm not sure I'm following what you're asking.
If we could put our 39-foot wide drive, road, street, whatever you want to call it, across the property that the taxpayers and ultimately to the school district purchased, I'd have a hard time swallowing it. If we build it to the specs y'all say, how can we, I mean, all this goes through, turn off the Stone Avenue, or the shop, Stone Avenue goes through. That's private. Y'all don't maintain it. We can't put a stop sign without ordinance. I mean, we can dedicate it to the city, but they're not gonna take it over because they got those streets to maintain already. That's what I'm saying. We're gonna maintain this new street.
But y'all said y'all were gonna maintain.
So you're suggesting making it a private road instead of a public road?
Right. Now we got it.
Okay. But then it wouldn't line up with the city's master thoroughfare plan.
We wasn't involved in the master plan, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So,
Nobody was.
yeah.
I mean, I want the city to prosper and grow, because everything that could develop and be in our tax base out here.
Right.
But it needs, and like I said, it's not y'all's fault, guys. If y'all wasn't notified, you wasn't working for the city or anything else. But, and I know y'all trying to work with us. We'll hear the other side, and hey, we might hear that, and hey, we got a solution. But right now, what we're seeing, taxpayers bringing down our throats since this got out. It's not fun.
I'm thinking from that standpoint, if you wanted to have a private road that just serves the elementary school, then an amendment to the thoroughfare plan would be the route you want to take to get that orange line removed from that property.
So whenever we build that road, y'all will pay us for that road, pay us for that land?
If we build
So
a-
y'all just gonna take the land and we don't get nothing out of it?
If the thoroughfare plan gets amended, there'd be no need to dedicate the right of way. And so then there'd be no need for the city to have that land.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we build what y'all tell us we have to build,
Right.
to get our permits, and all that money we spend on that road, and y'all say y'all gonna take it over and maintain it, but this never goes through. So y'all don't buy the land from us after we build the road.
The right of way is dedicated, and I think Andrew talked about it earlier, that if you were planning on building a 24-foot wide road from that southern.
Yeah, but then it won't be our road no more. What I'm asking, are you gonna buy the land from us? The road won't be our road no more, it'll be y'all's road.
The right of way will be dedicated to the city, and the city will maintain the road.
Okay, so y'all gonna buy the land that the road is sitting on, that's Omar's property?
It's just a right of way.
I did not say that.
It's a right of
We
way.
just dedicate it to.
Just like you have to give right of way.
It's very
to certain
similar to eminent
instances.
domain, but it's not necessarily eminent domain, it's the city ordinance that covers the city thoroughfare plan, correct?
It's a different process.
Right. Okay, so, Chris, my question, and I guess maybe it's more of a statement, so we were due to break ground on this building after the first of the year, and I realized that y'all had the meeting, so technically, as of right now, our construction is halted until we come to resolve this situation, correct? Correct, okay, thank you.
So we have to figure out
So what do we get out of the deal? Nothing?
What we have to do to make this, I mean, we have to come up with a solution before we can start our building. I mean, this all has to be resolved before we can start our building.
Yes, correct. Yes.
I mean, this is our future. We've been working on this for years and years and years and years and years. And now we're just at a halt with something we didn't even know was
We
going to
understand that
happen.
this is not the two of your fault. I just want you to know that we very much appreciate you presenting tonight, and we know that you weren't a part of this in 2001. But I just want to say thank you for answering questions. I know these are difficult questions, but you have to understand this is a total shock to all of us because none of us knew this plan even existed.
Sure, I understand it's frustrating. I understand it's frustrating. I think, Andrew talked about it earlier, that if you were planning on building a 24-foot wide road from that southern.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So,
So
I wish I could say more than
We
that.
do appreciate you reaching out to us, though, so we could make you aware of it, so we could start down the road of this process. And I think in response to what is the district going to get out of the street that's going to go in here, again, the city is offering to participate financially in the cost of that construction of that street for what it is that you all need. So the district, in cooperation with the city's taxpayer dollars on both sides, is prepared to partner with you all on this to the extent that is fair and equitable. And that distance, if it's 24, subtracted from 39, now we've got a number we can plan numbers around and cost participation. And we've already taken a look at that, and we're willing to work with your development team to figure that out more closely as well.
Mr. Mack, you wasn't in the city of Paris at the time. Go down there on South Collegiate, from Jefferson Road, South Collegiate, out to the Loop. Somebody fixed a sure nice concrete road going all the way what used to be a old one road called A Shed Road to help a school district on the other side of town. I'm not beating up on them, but I think taxpayers over here and our kids and our faculty and everybody need a little help over here too.
That's certainly your right to approach the city council and to ask for that assistance.
Yes.
And we're at the staff level at this point. This hasn't been brought up to our council or our planning commission. But at the initial look, staff is saying we will support doing our part to make it larger than what you all were planning on. So I think that was a good faith effort on the part of our city manager.
But we had to move our school because y'all's road was wide.
Well, there's a couple of different options. There's another option showed this road coming through the south side of the campus, leaving the campus more actually where it was originally shown. So that was the first option. I think your development team here is going to talk about this as a second option. And again, the third option is approach the P&Z and the council and get the plan wiped off the books.
Mr. Mack,
That's the third option.
Also down on 4th Southwest where it crosses the loop and goes to another school district, there's a pretty nice concrete drive. I don't know who, but if y'all want to work with us, I'm sure we can work with y'all too, okay?
Very good.
Hey, I appreciate you guys coming. I realize you're making a presentation of the plan that's in place. We appreciate you fielding questions from all over. Thanks for the information and being willing to work with us.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item C, consideration and approval, NLISD 2021 audit report. Ms. Birdwell.
Thank you all for the sound system. Outstanding.
Thank you.
Good job.
Good evening. Kelly Birdwell with Wolf & Henderson Audit Firm. Melissa just told me to make this short and sweet, so that's what we're going to do. First of all, I do appreciate you guys allowing us to work with your district doing your annual audit. So before you have a bound audit report, and I'm going to put some highlights, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop me during the presentation or at the end as well. I'm going to start on page 2. This is our independent auditor's report over the audit. Turning over to page 3, there is a paragraph titled Opinions. And this states that the financial statements for North Lamar ISD are fairly stated for the year ended June 30th, 2021. So that means we've looked at the numbers that are presented here, we've tested them, reconciled them, and we made sure that you can make good financial decisions based on those numbers. So let's look at some of those numbers. Turn over to page 14. So as you know, your district is divided up into different funds. Your main operating fund is your general fund. So looking on page 14, this is a balance sheet. Just like in a business, you've got assets, liabilities, and equity that is presented here. Your general fund is the first column. And I mainly want to focus on your fund balance, line 3,000. Your total fund balance is $9.3 million as of 6/30/2021. Of that, you've got some designations. You've got inventories of 2,500. You've got some committed fund balances, and the committed part is board approved and can only be spent for those items. It can only be changed with board approval as well. You've got retirement of loans and notes payable, $150,000, and then you've got other committed fund balance of $2 million, and that leaves you with unassigned fund balance of right over $7 million. Now that $2 million, that number has been designated for a while, but with your bond and additional costs, that cost may be used there for any kind of project overruns that you've planned. That's kind of your set aside. So your fund balance at $7.1 million. TEA, you've heard Melissa present the first ratings before, and that's based on your financial information. TEA gives you full points if you have 75 days of operation in your assigned and unassigned number. And here the district has over 100 days of operation there. So you do meet that qualification. You'll get all your points on that. So you do have an adequate fund balance in your general fund. So if you'll turn over on page 16, this is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. It's kind of like a profit and loss. You'll see that your revenues for your general fund, $22 million, your expenditures of $23 million, and then you've got other financing uses and sources over $1 million. So you have a net change in fund balance of $424,000. So that is an addition to your fund balance. That's a positive. A lot of that, this year was very challenging because you had the state funding was affected by the hold harmless numbers, and then you got ESSER grants due to COVID. So Ms. Stewart and Melissa had to work really hard along with their staff on how to use those funds and how to use them because they're spread out over 2 or 3 years. So this was a very hard year. So coming out with a $400,000 increase in fund balance is a very successful year. If you'll turn over to page 45, I just want to show you real quick the financials compared to your budget. I know you're very involved in your budget planning. And if you'll look on the schedule, this is based only on the general fund. You'll see that your first column is your original budget. And if you'll look down to line 1200, you had originally planned to dip into fund balance a little over $500,000. And then the next column, final, that's after you had some budget amendments. And again, it stayed where you thought you were going to have to dip into fund balance. The third column is the actual numbers we just saw. And if you'll see on that line, that's where you increased fund balance $400,000. So you actually got some revenues. You had a very conservative budget on your property taxes, ended up collecting more money on those. So your revenues exceeded your budget. You were very conservative in your expenditures, and so you will see that you were about $700,000 of additional budget excess for your expenditures. So you were almost $1 million better than what you had budgeted for this fiscal year. Okay, the last section, any questions on that? Okay, the last section I want to go over, page 65. This is another auditor's letter based on governmental auditing standards. We have to review internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. And you'll note here that in the first few paragraphs under internal controls, we did not find any deficiencies in your internal controls over financial reporting. And there were also no instances of non-compliance over your laws and regulations based on the state of Texas and TEA. The second set of, your third independent auditor's letters, page 67 and 68. This is required by your uniform guidance under a single audit. We had to focus on certain major programs that are federally funded. We looked at your special ed program, and then we looked at this new ESSER, which is your COVID relief that was flowed through the Department of Education. And again, we looked at the internal control over that major programs and over compliance, and we had no findings reported thereof. So you have a clean audit report, a qualified opinion, no findings. You put over $400,000 to your fund balance. And then you have a side letter here that we discussed with you as governance. And this is where if we have any comments or recommendations, we put these here, but we did not have anything added in the letter this year. Your staff does an excellent job in accounting and financial reporting and compliance for a school district in regards to TEA and the federal requirements as well.
Can't beat that. Okay, so.
I make a motion to accept this audit report.
Okay, motion made by Red, seconded by Bo. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate it. Okay, item D, discussion only, School Health Advisory Council, Ms. Chadwick.
So just real quick, I'm going to talk to you about this School Health Advisory Council because we are approaching a health adoption year. So every year we have some form of adoption in one of our curriculum areas. This year it's in health and PE. If you'll look, some of the information I've provided you in your board book is School Health Advisory Council's FAQs. So to understand what we're using to support the health adoption is our SHAC Council, that's School Health Advisory Council, and we call it SHAC for short. And what it is number one, to provide guidance to the district on coordinated health school programming and its impact on student health and learning. I'm going to skip down to number 3 on the FAQs, for the required duties. I want to look at bullet 1 and 3. The number of hours of instruction to be provided in health education and appropriate grade levels and methods of instruction for human sexuality instruction. Number 4, member requirements of SHAC. If you'll look at the bulleted list, it gives people who we would recruit to our SHAC committee, and we have people representing the first 5 bullets as well as staff members. So we have 8 parents, 2 students, and 6 staff members involved in our SHAC committee. That SHAC committee is an advisory committee, and they will provide advisory information on that curriculum. So if you look at the document titled HB 1525, School Health Advisory Council, and drop down where it says new SHAC curriculum requirements. This is where the district board shall adopt policy setting procedure for curriculum about human sexuality. Our SHAC will hold 2 public meetings, and they will bring back recommendations to the board for adoption for curriculum materials based on their recommendations that are suitable for the subject and grade level with expert advice and must be made publicly available. The district must obtain consent of parent and separate notice of at least 14 days before instruction. So that's just all in front of letting you know that we're following legal policy that gives the board the authority to determine what will be provided in our health instruction. This is the beginning process of adopting the curriculum resources for health education at North Lamar. Health education is required in 6th grade. See the teats that I have provided at your desk with additional elements spread out over 7th and 8th. Those teats are also provided for you. So you can see what we're talking about when we talk about the content of human sexuality instruction that is relayed through the teats. So in new policy EHAA legal, which we are working to set up the local response, the board shall determine the specific content of a district's instruction in human sexuality. The board shall select any instruction relating to human sexuality, sexually transmitted diseases, or human immunodeficiency virus or acquired immune deficiency symptoms with the advice of the SHAC. So basically, I'm just giving you that information so that you'll know that we have a great SHAC committee that is beginning the process of bringing that advice to you. And once that recommendation is determined, we will again approach the board with additional advice as to what the community believes should be taught in the areas that you see there through the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade health teams. Do you have any questions on that?
Do you have a timeline on that when we expect that?
The timeline is that we want to make a decision by April of 2022 on the curriculum resources. So what we want to do is at least approach prior to that so that when we do have our adoption, we can purchase those materials in time to implement those standards and curriculum next school year, 22-23. So by April 2022, we hope to have a presentation on what adoption that we plan to use. But prior to that, we'll bring forward the advice the SHAC has as to what content needs to be covered.
Is there a textbook in this, or is it?
There is a textbook that we currently have adopted. It's Glencoe Teen Health. It's been around a long time, and it's in the junior high right now. Letty Carter is the teacher who teaches that class. He has the current new adoption resource for review, and we have 2 members of our TRAC committee that will be on that committee to determine which one of those materials we feel like best implements everything that we're looking at. And Coach Carter is on our committee. He did come to the first meeting and share out with the committee how that book is laid out. He did state that the book is the same that the district has used for years, with the exception that this book now addresses topics like dating. So it is increased its content to accompany all the requirements of the TEKS. Now, that might not be the one that we pick, it might not be the one we choose, but it is the one we currently have, and we have the updated version. So we are comparing that currently. Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item E, consideration and approval, TEA required board outcome goals. Dr. Charlie.
So I approached you with these goals prior to COVID pandemic. That's when it was established, TEA established that the board would have outcome goals for early literacy, early math, and college career military readiness. And what I have for you today in your packet are the 3 tables that I presented to you prior to the pandemic. After each year, we were supposed to update that based on our STAR scores. Well, we didn't have any STAR scores that very next year. So I've updated these based on the most recent, the 2019 actual, which was the year that these were presented, and the 2021 actual STAR scores. There were no 2020 scores to report. And as a result of the 2021 actual, we have made some amendments or revisions to these goals. And what we would like to know is if you would approve these as being our revised goals going into this new testing year 2022 for early literacy being 3rd grade math, and early math being 3rd grade math, and in our college career military readiness. I've provided those for you. If you need any, it is kind of, there's a lot of data on this one. I tried to make them each kind of one-pagers. So if you'll look with me at early childhood literacy first, that might be easier to just kind of give you a view of that one, and early childhood math follows the same procedure. But the early childhood literacy is a 21, 22 and marker across the top. And that first row gives you the 2019 actual percentage of target goals that were met for all students, and the 2020 goal, and then the TEA target. So what these goals are, where it says yearly CTG stands for closing the gaps. Closing the gaps is simply taking your all students group and each of those other demographic groupings that you see across the page under closing the gap student groups yearly targets. And TEA gives you a target requirement of what they expect you to meet in each of those subgroups. The big numbers across the top are the all students group, and that's where we start. So if you look at 2019 actual, right below that, we scored 46% in all students at 3rd grade literacy. And our 2020 goal was 48%, and TEA's target was 44%. So we were 2 percentage points over TEA's target. So we were in the plus there. Then we didn't have 2020 scores to match a goal to. So skip to year 2021, our goal was 49%, and our 2021 actual was 43%, where TEA target stays the same for 5 years. That's why TEA target says 44% all the way across. So understand that that was the year of the pandemic. That was the year all scores dropped across the state. And I feel like what we're looking at is ours dropped to 43%, which was just 1 percentage point below what the state target was. So starting at 2022, what I'm showing you there is the old goal was 51%. Had nothing happened, that would have been our goal. but we're asking to revise that goal to 45%, seeing that we scored at 43% last year. Once again, the TEA target is 44%, so our goal is 1 percentage point higher than TEA target. And then as we go to 2023, we increase our goal of 47%, which prior to the pandemic, it was 53. Again, that's 3 percentage points higher than 44, the TEA target. And then 2024, we're at 50%. So these are the board outcome goals that we're asking you to approve for early childhood literacy. And then the breakdown of the different demographic groups, if you'll go down to the next table and go down to the 2022 old and the 2022 new. I tried to make that green, you can hardly tell, but the green is where I placed the new goals that we are requesting to shift to. I did not shift any goals for 2023 and 2024 because I thought we might want to see how we do first. I had a feeling we're going to overperform.
What are you using to adjust your goals down to?
The most recent test scores, the most recent results.
Is that like a certain percentage of what you think you can realistically achieve? I mean, is that how you landed on those numbers? Because I see in one of them, it's like the exact same as the old goal.
If you look at African American, is that the one you're talking
yeah,
about?
I mean, that's the one that I caught.
The 2022 old goal was 36%. That was our goal before the pandemic. So in the new goal, I didn't change that. And the reason we didn't change it is because our actual score was so high, there was no need to reduce that goal. The 2021 actual was 60% in that same category, if you look right above it. So I just didn't see any reason to change the goal.
Okay.
Even though we scored so much higher, sometimes a small demographic group can change drastically with just a few people.
Gotcha.
So I make a motion that we accept the board outcome goals.
A second.
Seconded by Sheila. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll move on to item F, consideration and approval, campus improvement plan. Stone, Ms. Hudson.
Good evening. I want to share the highlights of Stone's campus improvement plan for this year and touch on the main goals and objectives. For Goal 1, provide students a quality education for academic success. This year, our objective is we are focusing on providing accelerated instruction during advisory time to meet the needs of individual students, and also enrichment for those students who were successful last year on their START test. This will help us meet the needs of individual students with learning gaps and also push our high students forward. For our second goal, provide teachers with the curriculum, technology, instructional programs, and training necessary. Our objective is to focus on the opportunities that we have through the MIS grant and to grow the use of blended learning in the classrooms. And that also includes the online instructional tools and software that we're looking at to support teachers' instruction. We're also providing teachers with training that's specific to these programs to help their needs. For Goal 3, provide a quality learning environment that is positive, safe, and supportive. We're focusing on bullying prevention this year and establishing a system where students can report concerns safely. We're doing this through counselor lessons, teacher administrative discussions, and using our multimedia class to make student-centered videos. For Goal 4, planning that helps with college and career readiness. Our objective is this year was to add more advanced classes and additional classes that would give students CTE credit. For example, we added for our 7th graders wanting to take algebra. In 8th grade, we added a compacted math class to prepare them. We also added keyboarding for all our 7th graders to help prepare them in the real world and for high school. Another addition was principles of agriculture for our 8th graders. So we're very excited about these opportunities that we've brought to Stone this year, and this is what we're focusing on.
Does anyone have any questions?
I know our time's limited, but I would just like to give you a couple of kudos for all your planning. This is probably the hardest campus, I would think, to be in control of. I taught junior high for 5 years, and I totally understand. I know that through here you said you have caring, experienced teachers that try to be involved. How many students do you think that your core teachers, what would be the average number of students that they deal with every day? I mean, I'm talking about math and English, science.
It depends on the teacher's schedule, because a lot of our teachers also are coaches and have other classes that they teach, so the class size really varies. This year we're bringing in that MIS grant, the math grant. Those 6th grade teachers that are taking that on are actually being provided an extra conference time. So they have fewer students because of having less classes. So it really varies with the teacher and what they teach.
But say a teacher, do they teach 6 or 7?
We have 9 class periods, but that includes advisory. And they're given 1 to 2 conferences each, depending on again, the content. Some of our teachers do have another conference as well if they take on like a club, such as journalism. Or I've got one that does the technology for the campus, so he's got an extra conference. So we have several of those, so it really depends on the teacher and the content.
So if a core teacher could be maybe teaching 6, and then they have some time available for grading, planning, and all this. So it's not like they have 7 times 20, they're responsible for 140 every day.
Some do, some don't.
Okay, but there are still those core teachers that have 7 times 20, 140 every day.
There are some, yes ma'am.
Okay, all right. I just think, how I feel. I think it's hard to reach all those kids, and at that age level, those kids are a challenge. They are a challenge. I was also pleased to see that you said that most students are well behaved, and this is also a very tough age for that. I know bullying and all that at that particular age is also hard to deal with, and I just feel like that's a prerogative that we need to really look at. Now, I was also looking at where something about recruitment and retainment of teachers, and it seemed to have been stressed that we pay the lowest salary in the county. Do you really think that? And I'm just asking everybody in general, the pay is really a priority with most educators?
It is with some. We have some teachers that have been here for a long time that are North Lamar grads, and they're passionate about being at North Lamar, and they're here with us. It's just the facts of kind of the nature of where we stand in the pay scale. We have some pretty dedicated teachers that continue to do this job because they love being here and they love our students.
Well, do we have exit summatives for those that leave? Thinking that maybe pay is the reason that we might sometimes need to look at the general reason why. Because I'm all about retaining our great teachers. And I know you say here that our success is with the great teachers. You give total credit to your staff, and I do too. And I just feel like the time to effectively teach is the best way to improve, and I just want to compliment you on that and your efforts there. Another thing, because I was in high school for so many years, when kids come from Stone, you'll hear the secondary teachers or the high school teachers always say, they're not ready, they're so immature, they don't know how to do homework, they don't know how to get to class on time, but they are, and I know that we're making a great effort to prepare them for high school, but I just feel like, do we give homework in junior high at all?
It's there's some teachers, especially our advanced classes and as advanced teachers they do.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times, students, if they don't finish work in classroom, then they will finish that work as homework. But then we also have a 36-minute advisory time that is used for homework and for that that time. So a lot of homework doesn't go home because it gets done at school.
Yeah. Okay, and you're getting ready for blended learning, and you're excited about that.
We are.
And I think the accountability, the word for accountability, that the accountability is going to be more put on the students, and that's what sold me on this more than anything, because our teachers get blamed for their non-success, and I don't know how we can get it across to this age, at this immature age, that they are accountable for themselves, not just academically, but also behaviorally. And anyway, now one more thing on attendance. Do you have, or have you had, and I know that COVID made a big difference here, where they get exemptions from the semester exam by attendance and behavior?
Yes, we brought that back this year. That was a need. Mr. Keith and I, we saw on our campuses about bringing that policy back last year. We had exempted the semester exam waiver because of attendance with COVID. And we saw that that really did help with our students wanting to be at school, although there's some factors that kept them obviously out of school. But we have brought that back. It's a little bit different than it was before, but there's the semester exam exemption for students that have good grades and good discipline, good behavior on the campus.
Because I just thought that was huge, and it is huge. And even the older, especially when they're in algebra 2 and all that stuff, yeah, they want that exemption. I would just like to say this as part of your teachers and having been a teacher. The best way to get your kids on target and maybe more accountable, that parent, to me, a phone call, I mean, you can email, you can do all this, but an eye-to-eye contact or a phone call once maybe, and that's all it ever took, made a huge difference. Because these kids don't communicate with their parents. And sometimes, if there's any advice I give your teachers, make a direct contact with that parent. They would be amazed at the parent's response. For a real teacher making a real conversation person to person with them. That was probably the best thing Paul Allen ever taught me to do. He was on me all the time. Now, you need to do that. You need to do that. And it did pay off. Anyway, I compliment you.
Thank you.
Hey, I have one question, and it had to do with one of the demographic strengths that was listed was that your average years of experience for your teachers is 14 years at Stone. So it sounds like you've been able to maintain or at least keep teachers there for a while. And then Coach Daughtry had mentioned that one of the problems was the retainment of teachers. How are those two things existing together? Like, are you struggling to keep teachers and you're just keeping a handful that are boosting your average up so high? Or what's the predicament that you have there with campus?
I've only stepped into this role, as of last year, so I have not experienced a problem with retention as far as for salary. We've been very blessed to have little turnover at Stone. And we do have an exit survey, teachers fill out, and I only know of maybe one teacher that's voiced that they considered another job for a higher salary, but they actually stayed at Stone. And so I know we've talked about having a lower salary. I think where that comes into play is when we have to hire and when we're trying to fill positions. We really didn't have that issue last year.
So you haven't personally experienced a high rate of turnover, but you have only been there, like you said, for a year. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Northmore High School, Mr. Keith.
Good evening. Like the other campuses, some highlights from the high school that we're pretty proud of, that we like to hang our hat on. At the end of last year, our enrollment was at 683 students at the high school, and of course it has increased since then. At the time of when the plan was finished to 712, now it's down to 706. We have currently 117 transfer students that those families have a choice whether they want to go to some of the other schools in our city, or if they want to come to North Lamar. And so those conversations that we have with those families, it's pretty simple. Because, I mean, as the principal, I can brag all day long about our campus and about our district, but then I don't have to really brag. I can just put it to them and just look it up. You can, the reports are there online. You can see where we rate. You can see what our scores are. You can see all that. So families can expect to hear me talk about that, but I just tell them, but don't look at me. Look at what it says on paper. Look at what we report to the state. So that's something to be real proud of. As of this year, all of our English language arts teachers are now ESL certified, which they had not been in the past, and so they now all are now, which is something we're very excited about. As part of our special ed department at the high school, we are very fortunate to have a board-certified behavioral analyst, as well as a licensed behavior analyst by the state of Texas in our autism unit, which brings our district even more of an attractiveness because those are tough to come by in and around this area. I'm going to echo what Coach Doctor said a moment ago about how well the teachers perform at our district, and at the high school it is no different. As part of this, under the student learning category, the high school fared better in 10 out of 15 categories in comparison to the statewide EOC results from 18-19 to now 2021. And as Dr. Chadwick said a moment ago, as far as the 2020 scores did not count, well, it's a testament to how effective our teachers are to show the COVID year that was so difficult, and people were so worried that everybody was going to struggle, and they did. But to have us bounce back so impressively from the 18-19 recording time to the 2021 scores was very impressive. And so we had a big celebration at the high school at the beginning of the school year this year. The high school is above the state average in every category for the 2021 school year, which was last year. All of our English 2 masters, biology masters, and all of the U.S. history improved from those 18-19 scores. So that is definitely a big highlight. Some more highlights. The addition of a part-time CCMR counselor has been added to our campus in order to assist those students with meeting those target goals that Dr. Chadwick spoke about a minute ago, set for those graduates and postgraduate students in that Closing the Gaps category. To further improve the perception that the community has about our campus, we are starting a branding campaign to really showcase and take pride and show our pride about being a part of North Lamar, and just blasting our campus as well as the district with all kinds of branding to show how proud we are about where we work. Looking at the goals that the district has set aside for us, Goal 1, providing students quality education that will demonstrate academic success and individual growth. We provide before and after school tutorials, as well as our EOC accelerated instruction is geared toward those EOC failures, combined with common unit assessments and interim testing that will be incorporated this year to further track that growth, being that growth is the measuring factor. Providing that accelerated instruction required by House Bill 4545, built into our master schedule during our advisory time, similarly to Ms. Hudson. We utilize that data that we collect from those assessments to adjust those instruction strategies for those students in classrooms to kind of tailor-make their education experience. The introduction of interim testing to track those individual progress in order to help bolster our special ed program as well as our average populations to help them obtain the MEETS level on their EOCs. For Goal 2, provide teachers with curriculum, technology, instructional programs, and training necessary for student growth. A multitude of things are provided to the teachers that anticipate professional development opportunities through not only Region 8, but professional conferences, along with the professional development opportunities designed by the district. Teachers also will complete professional development directly related to improving their student achievement in the classroom, as well as improvement for them specifically in their field that they teach. So that way it is guaranteed to make an impression of their own field that they're teaching. Goal 3, provide a quality learning environment that is positive, safe, and supportive. We promote school spirit and community involvement with all of our school activities, and also creating a safe school environment through increasing the awareness of bullying, dating violence, through positive discipline for all subpopulations, as well as pregnancy services for students as needed. And then finally, our goal 4 was to develop a plan with college and career readiness by facilitating a process that explores self-interest and career aspirations. We've added CTE classes based on need and student interest. Our district trainer, Mr. Barker, we are utilizing the assets that we have. So having Mr. Barker take on a class of his own in sports medicine, which of course generates money for the district, and the interest that we got from students that want to be a part of that, as well as our district nurse, Justine Weidman, utilizing her assets. And so she approached us about teaching a class in nursing and medical terminology, and so we utilized her as well. So utilizing what we have is because we believe in them so much. But also increase the percentage of students participating in college and career readiness testing, such as the ASVAB test and those types of things. And then increasing student awareness of military opportunities by having representatives from the military come to our campus, have meetings with our students to show them the benefits of being in the military. And then, of course, like I said before, having a designated CCMR counselor to help those kids help make those decisions as to where they want to go and plan for their future as well. So those are the highlights of our high school. Any questions?
Mr. Keith?
Yes, sir.
You got that high school rocking.
Thank you.
Doing a great job.
I'll tell you, and I can't say it enough. I mean, Sheila says it just right. I mean, the teachers in this district are just stellar. I tell them every time we have faculty meetings, I send, I mean, our social media blasting of teachers and what the great things that they do and the students that we have. I mean, it's hard to deny that. And we can, like I said, we can brag all day long, but the proof is in the pudding. I can show you a piece of paper that says, this is how we do. So there's really no other place to go.
And if you've never heard this man in a pep rally, you need to. You need to. That's for your whole district. I would like to compliment Mr. Keith because reading through here, I think he recognized the CTE teachers, the core teachers, the workload that they have, the number of students that they have, the need for them to have time to effectively teach. I think your staff is often stressed because they are such great teachers and they feel like they are rushed. They can't always meet those teachers, those students every day with you know what they have on their plate.
Sure.
And I know, because Leslie and I have talked about this for years, we were targeted as overstaffed for so many years. And let me just say this, the place to not cut is your core teacher staff, your CTE, I mean, there's some of them with 7 classes and an overload. And I'm just proud that you recognize that, and I know how hard you want to try to change that.
The great thing is, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You know, the increased enrollment, well, that means that at some point you're going to be able to open up those doorways to more teachers, which is going to reduce those class sizes, and it just gets better and better. So the more you put in, the more you're going to put out. The problem is it is a double-edged sword, so you have classes that are quite large, and it's just kind of it's a great problem to have. But it's tough. But not every teacher feels like I can't get any help until the next year because you got to go through take out the shit. But hopefully, you know. But that's part of our job is to make it so attractive and to make it so great so that the people that move into our city they have a choice and they say, well, you know what? Why am I going to come to North Lamar High School as opposed to Chris or Chisholm or somewhere else? I mean, we have some of our transfer students. They come as far away as Clarksville, and I'm like, they could go almost 50 miles in any direction, but they don't. They hear about what we do.
And when we were losing students and they seeing all these problems for leaving, we got up 117 back.
Yeah.
And I bet we'll get even more back because once they go somewhere else,
oh yes,
then they compare them to us.
That is true. The students that we have left from our campus voluntarily, they left because they had moved to a different state or a city that's way beyond the ability to transfer to us. And that, to me, I'm going, that's pretty special.
I have a question for you. if I'm understanding Coach Daughtry right, some of the strain on the teachers comes from the adjustment that was made to the master schedule to conform to that House Bill 4545. When you look at that, do you see any way that you can make adjustments in that master schedule in the future to maybe provide some relief that's being sensed?
We are currently looking at that right now. We were just now able to, because of the requirement, the 30-hour requirement for each student who fails in the EOC and that sort of thing. We are ahead of schedule as far as the track for those students to get that requirement of 30 hours. So now we've been able to back off of that. So now then those students aren't having to have that instruction. Some of them have gotten so close that we can now put that to the next semester. So that way take some of that load off of those teachers so that they have more time to be able to help prepare for their classes and that sort of thing. So yes, we're looking at other ways that we can help to do that. It's tough with the moving parts that are in that school. But that is on our mind all the time. And so what we do is we meet with department heads, because that's what their job is to give us that input. So it's like we're not making all these decisions. We talk with the department heads, we talk with the faculty and say, these are the elements that create the issue. How can you help us facilitate this? And so to make your job easier and better so that people don't leave and people don't get out of the profession. And we've had some challenges with the worker shortage that's going on. We are unaffected. And so, but yeah, we are definitely we look at ways to make this better, to take some of that pressure off them. So this last effort, the teachers were very appreciative of it, because I checked in. How do you see the difference? Oh my gosh, yes, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So what we're doing at this point is now able to work better.
I only had one other thing, it was just an observation I was curious about. In the demographics, part of the summary, it said females make up 50% of the educators and males representing 50%, the other 50%. Was that a goal or a target to be split 50-50, or did it just happen to be that way?
I think it just happened to be that way. It's not a goal to do. It's just.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll need a motion to. Okay. Motion made by Sheila, seconded by Joel. All those in favor? All those opposed? Were you in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. And item G, discussion and consider ratifying certain bond construction agreements. Mr. Lambert.
Board members, thank you for having me tonight. I want to start by in the outset to tell you that this item that's on your agenda is not an item that is either legally required or required by your local policy. It's really more of a best practice that we talked about whenever we were doing resolutions related to some of these contracts. But basically, Ms. Stewart wanted you to have the opportunity, after having delegated to her the authority to enter into construction contracts with HWH as your construction manager at risk, as well as Symmetry and HWH related to your athletic fields, Hayter for surveying, and ETTL for geotech, as well as a supplemental service for your food service that's going to go with the new elementary. Basically, we wanted to make sure that those contracts come back to you and you can actually see what's been entered into, have the opportunity to see them, and then give your oversight and blessing to them. So that's really the purpose of the action item tonight.
Since we were discussing the different construction contracts, Mr. Strain, if you wouldn't mind at this time, would you please give an update in regards to where we are with this?
Before Michael does that, I want to also indicate that our process of coming up with or negotiating and working on the terms of the contracts, we utilized. Come on up here, Michael. We utilized a number of people at Parkfield in terms of discussing some of the terms that went into the contracts for cemetery, HWH, and these consultants. And so, anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Good evening, everybody. Everybody should have a copy of these notes. Okay, so I'm just going to go down through these real quick. Actually, I'm going to skip over the elementary school because Hector's going to come later. He's going to talk about that. So really, this is just meant to give you an update on the bond projects, just for information purposes. So if we go down to Frank Stone, that's your second item on there. You'll see first, we've taken the HVAC units out of the overall middle school project, and we've prioritized that, moved it forward. That's really just waiting on HWH's agreement to continue moving that forward and getting construction going on that. And then as far as the rest of the Frankstone Middle School improvement projects, our team has already been out. They were right here last Thursday doing roof surveys and measuring toilets and all the various things that we need to do in order to start that work. So they are working on that actively. We go down to North Lamar High School improvements. Again, same thing for HVAC there. We're just waiting on HWH's contract to get signed there, and they'll get right to work.
Michael, it's actually been signed as of today.
Okay, there you go. It's been signed as of today. Good. So they'll be getting started really quick. I know Corey's he's going to be back, I believe, at the end of this week. Again, on the gym floors, that's a project that we prioritized. We brought it forward. It was much later in our plans, but I think that request to bring it forward, so we have. Our architectural team has already been out, looked at that, surveyed those floors. Our structural team is coming out on the 11th. They're going to go crawl under the floor, and they're going to look at the structural conditions. So just to give you an update on that, we're actively working on those. The intercom project is in progress. Kelly, I might need a little bit of help on that one. You know exactly where we're at.
Well, Rick is working with that right now.
Okay. So it is moving forward. On the athletic projects, I think most of you guys know, as soon as we have symmetry, we have
those are signed
now.
too.
11/4, right? Today?
I'm sorry.
Which time today for symmetry?
Yes.
Okay, so those are ready to go. You can see the dates there. I think a lot of you would try to miss certain seasons and try to give play on certain fields at certain times. I think you'll know that we had to switch over to symmetry, but it looks like they've got it all worked out real well there. And then on the second page, I'm going to go over this very briefly. I'm not going to read this whole thing. Bo, you probably know a lot about what I'm about to talk about here. But I mentioned this many times as we were doing the planning for the bond, and I'm going to try to keep you guys up to date as much as I can. But the big thing here, this page is really just about construction material systems and labor outlook, in 2022 and beyond. So I think we all know, watching the news, that there are product shortages, there's labor shortages, there's all kinds of stuff going on. But the assurance I want to give you is that we did plan a little bit liberal on your planning. So instead of 1.8%, 2%, we planned your escalation to be 3% on most of your projects. So we were looking out for that. In fact, if you look at that chart at the very bottom, it's basically just a chart that shows on the far left-hand side where prices were before the pandemic hit, and you can see all the way through February of 2021 how prices kind of got out of whack, right? And so the right-hand side of that chart is when we called the bond. So if you remember me telling you there was a lot of volatility in the market, we're still seeing that. But what I can tell you is we look at it almost on a daily basis right now among all the projects that we're working on, especially in your market. We're working with HWH just to, if we can get things sooner out in the field, we will do that. If we can find systems that are not subject to a shortage, like plastics right now is a big deal. If we can find ways of not using as many of them, or maybe an alternate system, we're looking for those kind of things as well, just to make sure that everything stays moving smoothly. So I really don't have any specific updates on materials and systems yet, since we're not quite in construction on any of those projects yet, but just want to make sure you guys are aware that we're looking at those things as we progress also. Any questions on any of that?
Thank you, Michael. So in the black 3-ring binder in front of you, you will find all of the construction documents. I'm just going to read through these because I'm going to ask that the board ratify the following agreements. This is A101 and A201, which is an agreement between Symmetry and the district concerning field maintenance and upgrades. A101 and 201 agreements with Symmetry and the district concerning the indoor practice facility turf replacement and track resurfacing. A105 agreement between HWH and the district concerning HVAC replacements and drainage improvements. A133 and A201 between HWH and the district concerning HWH serving as construction manager at risk for the North Morrisey Line construction projects. The professional surveying agreement between Hayter Engineering and the district, and the agreement for consulting services between ETCL Engineering and Consultants concerning geotechnical services related to the proposed new elementary school, and an agreement for food design professionals for food service equipment designs. And tonight we have Mr. Whitley here from Hayter Engineering. Mr. Whitley, can you just give a quick update to the board on where we are as far as the surveying?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time. We got the agreement back, I believe it was on the 26th from Mr. Lambert. We had a crew out there that Friday starting to find the boundary points. Had a crew out there every business day since then. We've covered the drainage ditch along the north boundary line, and now we're working on the 50-foot grid throughout the property. We're starting on the north side, working our way south. Even with the thoroughfare questions, we can still continue with our topographic survey, which we have. I've called in utility locates, so the Texas 811 can locate any subsurface utilities along the highway or on the side. They haven't responded yet, but that's not uncommon. I think the survey is over on the priority list. But with getting those requested early, we shouldn't have any trouble with those.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Whitley? Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just available to answer any further questions related to the contracts.
Okay, so at this time, I'll need a motion to ratify the following contracts that are read aloud.
Motion made by Joel, seconded by Bo. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Item H, consideration and approval, cast votes for Lamar County Appraisal District Directors, Ms. Stewart.
Okay, enclosed in your board book is a resolution from the Lamar County Appraisal District. In the last board meeting, you selected a nominee, which was Mr. Dunman, to go on the ballot. The number of votes available for our tax unit is 930, and those can be allocated in any way. So tonight, the board will need to decide who they're going to cast the votes for the district for. The nominees are Don Beard, David Dunman, Clifton Finley, Ken Coles, Ed McCraw, and Marcus Wood. So we'll need a motion on how you want to cast those 930 votes. It can go for one person, or those can be split.
Make the motion to David Dunn.
Second. Okay, motion made by Bo, seconded by Red.
Is that for all 930 votes?
So is Mr. Bennett, he's the one that's in our district, correct? It's right here. It's right Okay, so we have a motion made by Red. No, I'm sorry. Motion made by Bo, seconded by Red. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Okay. Then item 6, superintendent's report.
Okay, the state band competition is this week. That's on Wednesday, November 10th. Tickets and live stream information for this event can be found on the UIL website, so that's www.uiltexas.org. Our band will be performing in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. The first performance is at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, and the finals begins at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. On Tuesday, December 7th, the School Board Association will have their annual meeting at Region 8, and so if any of you are interested in traveling to that, The sign-up is actually on the Region 8 website. Does anyone have any questions in regards to either item?
Thank you. Item 8, executive session. The board will conduct a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapters D and E. So we will now go into executive session, 7:59.